It's a wondrous day for Final Fantasy Tactics news, my friends, as we were just informed by Square Enix themselves that a notable and actually pretty important piece of cut content from the original Japanese version of Final Fantasy Tactics has been added to all versions of the game that will be coming out with the Ivalice Chronicles. And to get ahead of the game, no, we're not talking about the restoration of any jobs that were cut or anything like that. However, this is still very important content, and I'm very excited that we're finally all going to have access to it. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including keeping you all up to date with the latest news about Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles leading up to its release, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. So what is this cut content that is now being restored? Well, have you ever wondered why you can't do anything with any of those treasures or books or things that you found in previous versions of FFT when you've gone and done random dispatch missions and like you get a little lore piece afterwards like, oh, this is a cool treasure. Gonna toss it in a menu and never look at it again. Well, that's because at least some of those treasures, specifically books, actually did have gameplay features to them, but only in the original PS1 Japanese release. Due to time and budget constraints, this feature was only ever included in that original release, even across other later versions of FFT like the War of the Lions or the mobile versions. Some of you may already be familiar with these, whether you've played the original Japanese release or because you saw them in different forms later on due to fan translations, but if you, like me, have not seen them before, here's what they are. When you go on certain dispatch missions, you will receive a sound novel, essentially a choose-your-own-adventure visual novel that you'll then be able to access through the Brave story. These are fully fledged short stories created by individual teams within Square Enix that reference other games in the franchise, different nations, or stories from within Final Fantasy Tactics itself, and all of which have their own distinct mechanics. Now, from what I've read about these in the past, some of them were a little jank, and it seems like maybe these teams didn't actually communicate with each other at all during the development of the original game. However, I imagine that these might have been cleaned up a little bit with this new release. Assuming that no new novels have been created, we can expect 4 different titles that you'll be able to discover with time: The Veil of Wiu, Nanai's Histories, Mesa's Musings, and the Ivalice Chronicles. After the mission where you acquire each of these novels, you'll be able to go into the Brave story and read them from the beginning, and you will actually get different scenes and different endings depending on what choices you make. Now, in the original release and the original versions of these stories, I'm not aware of there being any direct gameplay benefits for you for completing them. They're more just fun and interesting lore tidbits, again, like a lot of the information you get from dispatch missions themselves, or even if you read the Ivalice Chronicle, which functioned in a similar way in all versions of the game, but did not have a choose-your-own-adventure angle to it. Each of the books comes with its own complement of music and unique imagery, which, as you would expect, will dynamically change and evolve over the course of reading the book. Without getting into what each one is in its entirety, because obviously why would I want to spoil the plot for you or for myself, the topics are as follows. The Veil of Wiu, which is apparently actually a mistranslation, we'll see what it winds up being translated as in this new release, is a spy story about a spy named Olivert, sent to keep an eye on a writer who might have some politically relevant information. Nanai's Histories follows a psychologist of Ivalice who spent his life analyzing different characters, and he tells the story of a particular gambler. Mesa's Musings is an adventure story about an airship captain and crew in search of a lost city of gold. That's the one that we can actually see in the recently released screenshot here, and seems to have a specific mechanic that relies on using your HP or your fuel to be able to get places without running out of fuel and then, crashing. Finally, there's the Ivalice Chronicle, a historical drama about the 3 daughters of Lord Albert of Kuus Castle, and the gameplay seems to center around guiding the relationship between one of these daughters and her love. Given all of the art created specifically for these sound novels and the music for it as well, which you may have been able to find in online OSTs or in the sound test if you're able to find it in older versions of the game, it's still going to be really nice to have a more complete version of the original content of FFT that never made it outside of Japan in the past in an official capacity. All told, this is just another additional feature for the Brave story that's been added to FFT to flesh it out as a full game and world. They're all going to have access to it for the first time in its complete form. And maybe it's something that we could wind up seeing more stories of, potentially, if they decided to flesh it out a little bit. That's probably not likely, but it would be really cool to see. Either way, I will definitely be checking these out once the game is fully released, and I expect that most of you will as well. And if you're someone who's actually read these stories before, whether through wikis or through fan translations, or if you speak Japanese and you saw them in the original release or anything along those lines, let us know your thoughts about the quality, and maybe if you're hoping there's any changes or modifications to them to clean them up a little bit in the comments below. I'm pretty contextless for these. I've always heard about the sound novels, but again, I never really went out of my way to check them out just because I don't know, if I was going to, I'd rather see it in the game, so I never got around to it, and now we're going to have the opportunity to do so. So is there anything we should know going in? Let us know. If you haven't seen these before, are you as excited as I am to finally be able to check them out, or is this just kind of like an irrelevant piece of information for you? Let me know all that and more in the comments, and we can have a good little discussion. And actually, I'm going to toss this in post-script before we close out the video. I didn't realize at first there is a slew of information in the feature section about Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles on the official Japanese site. I initially was just looking for the section that talked about these new sound novels, but scrolling down through this whole page, there's some nice new information. A lot of it is stuff that we already knew, but for example, we have screens showing off where you can actually go in the menu to search for specific castles and towns with specific types of gear that you can then fast travel to if you need a specific type of sword or knife or clothes or armor or whatever for your guys. Really cool. Have not seen this screen before. We have direct confirmation of the whole search for the enemy versus random battles thing that we had discussed previously. We actually have the screen showing the fact that when you go into fights where you're going to have multiple fights in a row, you actually have a specific screen of art showing where each battle is in that procession. And you have the ability to leave and go back to the map to buy other gear, train up, whatever it is that you might have to do, just like you would in, say, Tactics Ogre Reborn, something we had theorized about, kind of seen discussed, but now have direct confirmation of here. There's even little quality of life features like being able to mass delete monster eggs by toggling a setting in the actual config settings. There's a ton of really nice little bits of information here that either adds context to topics that we've discussed previously or are good to know but so minute that they wouldn't really fit into a normal video. So I'll have a link to this page in the description if you want to scroll through it for yourself and just get an overall comprehensive view of all these different changes. It's pretty cool to see, and there's some nice screens here I'll be analyzing later. But anyway, just wanted to toss this in here since I happened to see it as I was editing the video. Now we can get back to the tail end of said video. For now, though, I'm going to wrap this one up here. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other, y'all. Bye now.